The Phoenix Suns, a team that just a few years ago was on the precipice of greatness, competing in the NBA Finals against the Milwaukee Bucks, and now at the point of almost a complete rebuild, with Devin Booker staying that foundational piece after trading Kevin Durant, acquiring Jalen Green, and now having very few draft picks after acquiring Kevin Durant just a few years ago. This team is in purgatory. And today we talk about the state of this team coming into this year. And of course, you have to start with their star, Devin Booker. Devin Booker has been the staple of this team through now almost two rebuilds, basically. And the question is whether or not the Phoenix Suns are actually going to keep Booker around. And honestly, I don't think they necessarily should, just because, again, I think this roster is horrible. Now, again, it also depends on whether or not you think Devin Booker necessarily wants to move. And will it become a Damian Lillard-esque situation where by the time he asks out, he's going to be a little bit way older, and at that point, he's not going to be quite the same player, and then he's just going to end up right back in Phoenix. I think if you're Devin Booker, you could ask out, but with the state of the league and the collective bargaining agreement and the money and the way that all this stuff is working out, you're better off at least trying to stick it out. You've got a lot of young talent that hopefully around you can continue to grow and build. So maybe within a year or two, and Booker will be just about 30 or 31, this team could be something. Now, Booker did have a bit of a down year statistically when you look at everything. The field goal percentage dropped. The 3-point percentage was a little alarming, but again, I don't think it's going to stay that low, especially when that's the lowest basically in the entirety of his career. I think Devin Booker is going to bounce back to that 27, 28 points per game guy. I think you're going to see the assists probably go up. I do think, though, again, this roster is not well constructed for a Devin Booker. I don't think Devin Booker is meant to be a primary playmaker / ball handler. He is meant to be that secondary guy in terms of, passing and playmaking. Scoring wise, he's meant to be the guy. Unless you have a dude like KD there. But I think with Booker there, this team, it's partially what puts this team into purgatory, because their roster can be decent enough to steal games against really good teams. And I still think the roster is good enough that if they play a team like Washington or Charlotte or the Jazz, they can snag those however many wins to rack them up to get to about 30 to possibly mid 30s, low 40s wins. And then at that point, it's like, oh, well, you're not good enough to, get or not bad enough to get a high pick. You've traded so many of your picks. And I will say, this young core is what determines what this team, I think, is going to do within the next couple of years. But after talking about how Devin Booker has put the team in purgatory just in terms of his overall skill, we're now going to look at what I think is going to be an important piece to this build. And honestly, it's going to be a bit odd. I think Mark Williams is going to be a big piece of this rebuild. Mark Williams, I know what you guys might be thinking, but Emser, they drafted Kaman. Kaman, I think, is a developmental guy, personally. I don't think he's going to start. I think he shouldn't for now. And with a guy like Mark Williams and his overall, ability in that pick and roll, and just, I think he's a really good rim protector. That will be really good for this Suns team, because they have not had that basically since Ayton, in my opinion. You had Nurkic there for a while. Even KD had slid to the 5. It just was not good. Their defense at the rim was horrendous. So to me, having a Mark Williams there, and even at times, once he gets really adjusted to the speed of the game, I think is going to be important. And I think it's going to be even more important because, again, I think Booker is at his best when he does have a big to work with to help him operate into that mid-range or into that 3-ball versus always just being pure ISO. So I think with Mark Williams, he can do a couple key things for this rebuild / retooling. One, he helps provide your superstar of the now, right? Devin Booker will benefit from the way Mark Williams plays basketball on both ends of the floor, right? He'll have an anchor behind him. Not that he's, Mikal Bridges out there on the perimeter defensively, but he's not Trae Young either, right? Then he helps your future, right? Because then Kaman can sit and learn and practice with and learn and absorb from Mark Williams what he can. And then that way he can, again, now you're helping your future. So Mark Williams in a way, is the best of both worlds. He helps your present, but he helps your future, which arguably is even more important with, the draft capital being where it is and all of that. You're helping your future and your now, which I think is huge. And then there's one interesting component that I do want to talk about, and I'm just not sure what he's going to do, and that is Jalen Green. Now, Jalen Green, I know I'm not the biggest fan of Jalen Green. I've talked about it in multiple videos when I used to break down the Rockets, and he was over there. But him and Booker on the same team feels worse and repetitive. Because, again, I think Booker clears as a passer and playmaker, and they're both kind of score-first guards, except Jalen Green is not as good at it. At what point does he come in? Is he your backup? Is he that sixth man? And if so, maybe that's good for Phoenix. Because, again, you want some future now, and he's on a decent deal. Like, his deal isn't bad or anything, so to be able to get that off the bench, now again, we don't got to get into, the horrendousness that was the playoffs, but at this point, I think Jalen Green maybe might benefit from being that six-man role, where he can kind of run the unit, right? He can run it, honestly, maybe with a guy like Kaman. Maybe he can help grow Kaman's game, use him in the pick and roll and all that jazz. For this team, Jalen Green is going to be an interesting piece. He could really affect how this team operates in terms of the way they're looking at who their young guys are. Because there's a chance, too, that once Jalen Green's contract is up, you could let him walk, right? Now, again, you got a couple years for that, but still, the idea remains. You do not have to feel indebted to Jalen Green. So maybe if he doesn't perform that well, even in the six-man capacity, we'll see you around. So overall, when we talk about the state of the Phoenix Suns, I think for them, they're cooked, quite frankly. And I think you guys have heard about this video. I'm trying my best to pull the positives out of this situation if you're Phoenix. And there are some. There are objectively some positives in this arrangement. But we're going to now get into the overarching picture. When you look at the big picture, this team is donezo, kaput. Their season is done. They had a nice run since everything changed when they lost that series against the Mavericks. The front office panicked. They pulled the trigger on the KD trade, and then their picks just ended up going down the drain. And then, KD was getting hurt and Booker was getting hurt. And then what signed their death, the time of death was when they traded for Bradley Beal. At that point, with the CBA, you tied your cap to an anchor and just sunk. And there was nothing you could do but watch. And I think, quite frankly, that is where this team really slipped. And now you've got to hope that the picks you've gotten and the trades that you made, so like acquiring Mark Williams, come on. You hope that guy like Ryan Duncan continue to grow. You got Rasheer Fleming. Some of these dudes, you've got to hope hit relatively soon. Because if not, Booker's got that contract extension, so he's here for now. So unless you're about to get a premium package for the Devin Booker, which you could, right? Like, let's say, I don't know, some team wants to give up 3 first-rounders or something, or maybe 2, really good first-rounders and then a bunch of young guys. Okay, cool. But if not, this team, I think, is destined for the 10 to 11 seed. Like, I'm going to name teams. I want you guys in the comments to let me know when you're going to think there's a team confident, you're 100% confident, are going to be better or worse, my apologies, that are going to be confidently worse than the Phoenix Suns. The Thunder, the Rockets, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Mavericks even. Are they guaranteed to be better than a team like the Kings, or honestly, a team like San Antonio this year? I don't think so. There's a chance they end up the 12th seed. Like, there's a chance they end up with a worse record than they had last year, which was 36-46. And again, I think it's just because this front office just started to go after name power, and they just tried so hard, throw names together on a sheet of paper and hope that it all clicked, and it never did. But as always, guys, this was Mr. No Soups. Let me know what you guys think about this Sun situation. I think it's done. I think it's cooked. I think their time in the sun, unironically, is done. But as always, this was Mr. No Soups. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. It's one of my favorite things to read. So as always, this was Mr. No Soups. Peace out.